Today we're looking at QYLD, but more specifically, we're looking at this new fad, uh, the QYLD free money plan or the QYLD money glitch plan. Basically, there's this new idea going out there that people are buying into, and basically they think they're getting free money. And so what we're going to do in this video, we're going to break it down. What is it? We're going to look at an example of someone documenting it and see how their journey is going down so far. We're going to look at it in a spreadsheet, see how it actually looks based off my calculations, and then talk about what's potentially wrong with this, as well as what's a safer way to do it if you would consider putting all your cash into one position in a safe play. So some people thought the 12% dividend yield of QYLD wasn't enough, and they realized that they can borrow money from their broker at very low rates, such as Interactive Brokers for 1.5%, or Robinhood, I think it's 2.5%, and then take that money and invest it in more shares of QYLD, where they can get 12%, and since they're able to pay off the margin interest with the dividend itself, it's basically free money, and it'll help them grow their portfolio quickly. And that's the whole idea behind this, is use margin to buy more shares to increase the income. Because if you can borrow money at 1.5% and you get a 12% return on it, you collect the difference, and that's just free money, or the money glitch. So that's basically what the plan is, and I guess there's actually people that are employing this strategy. So what's mind-blowing to me is that people are doing this strategy, but they're doing it on a ETF that's designed to go down over time. When you're borrowing margin to buy a stock, if the stock goes down, you have to put up more capital to secure the position potentially, or if the margin requirement goes up, same thing, and you risk getting a margin call. So here you are putting your money in a position that is meant to go down over time, and we'll just have to dive into it and see what it looks like. So, all right, so this guy on Reddit, Eggplant420, he's actually doing this with his account. He's using 100% of his buying power to purchase as many shares as he can. And when he gets a dividend, he's using whatever additional buying power he gets to go back up to 100% buying power used. Now he's using Robinhood, so he gets about 2-to-1 buying power. I'm surprised that if he's doing the strategy, he isn't using Interactive Brokers to get that lower margin interest rate, because that's an extra 1% saved over the course of a year, especially if you're willing to go 100% buying power. But anyway, looking at his post, he does have like a timeline that he's trying to achieve. And in phase 1, he's trying to get to 12,500 shares of QYLD quickly. I think that would generate you about $30,000 in income a year, assuming QYLD continue to pay out a 22-cent dividend. All right, so when he gets to phase 2, his goal is to reduce his margin usage to 25 to 50%. And basically, I think he's doing this by either eliminating how many shares he buys when the dividend comes out completely, or at least mostly, so that he can get down there pretty quickly. Like, that seems like a solid plan to de-lever if you get to that point without getting a margin call. And then phase 3 is just to get rid of the margin used and enjoy the dividends and retire and have fun. Now, he started with purchasing 7,106 shares. Looking at QYLD in August, because this is actually when he did it. In August, let's go ahead and say he got it at the dip in August, and that's $22.50. That's going to be the price range that we work with in our Google Sheet when we get to it. So we bought a bunch of shares. His dividend is essentially double because he's using all of his 2-to-1 buying power. So based off this information, we can figure out that he has about an $80,000 account that he's working with. So he's borrowing $80,000 in margin to purchase more shares of QYLD. You can see he's already starting to pay interest when he gets his stuff. And he's, oh man, I still can't believe someone's willing to do that. But there he is. So that's what this guy is doing. And looking at the comments through the post here, like there's a lot of people that are doing something similar. Well, maybe not 100% margin, but there are people doing similar strategies to try to use that margin to leverage up and make more money. Let's go ahead and jump at the spreadsheet. So what I was looking at is, let's compare what would happen if you only took that 80K, bought QYLD, and let that drift versus his plan. And I used the spreadsheet that I made before. I just modified it to accommodate this, and you can see how this plays out. Over here, what I had to do was the amount of shares dripped would actually be ×2 the total dividend, because he still put in 100% of his margin or of his new buying power to use. So if he gets paid 1563, he should have about 3,000 to buy shares with because of the buying power increase. So that's how this is different than what the other stuff was. And you can see, like, obviously, yeah, he's gonna have almost double the income starting out. But what's crazy is just how fast it snowballs, because he reaches his 12,500 shares in the middle of 3 years, and his monthly income becomes $27.90. So that's 31 months to hit that goal using his margin plan. If you were to just have the 80K invested, and your goal is still to hit 12,500 shares, you have to go 11 years before you hit that point. So 11 years versus 3, like, huge difference. I can see the appeal. Like, you want to be greedy and get that income quickly. But some of the issues that we know about margin, like, if the share price goes down, you get that margin call, or the broker can liquidate your positions, force you to sell assets. Just, I don't think it's smart to be doing 100% of your margin. Another thing I wanted to look at is, well, what if instead you use 10% margin? And if we did that, I did the same calculations, except instead 80K, but you add 10% of the extra buying power through margin, so you will be paying some interest, and see how that plays out. So what happens with the 10% version is you still get there a lot quicker than if you weren't using any margin at all because of compounding. But I mean, it's up to you to decide what percentage you use if you're going to do something like this. And if you just use 10% instead of 100%, it'll take you about 6 years to get there. Just the start of the 6th year, you'll get to that goal that he wants to get to. So by using 100%, he only shaves 3 years off, but he's adding so much risk. 10%, you get there 3 years later. Like, that's not that long in the grand scheme of things. But the amount of risk you take off the table, if the stock drops 50%, you're still not getting a margin call if you only use 10% margin on an 80K account. Versus here, a 10% drop, and I mean, I'd be curious to see what happens with them. So if you were going to do the strategy, I wouldn't YOLO it all in one position. Maybe spread out. Maybe do the quadfecta portfolio that's very popular. And that's a combination of QYLD, JEPI, Devo, and NUSI. And you can still do 10%, 20% margin, whatever you're comfortable doing to increase that growth quickly. Because if you use a broker that has a small interest rate, like, it is an advantage. But just be aware that the broker can at any time change the requirements for how much it takes to hold these positions. And it can also increase the margin rate or the interest rate, because it's not a fixed rate. So that can change at any time. So if you're going to do the strategy, keep an eye on that kind of stuff. If the broker changes those parameters, maybe sell off the shares that you were buying with margin if you need to. Just so you don't have to deal with it. So, like, you can start doing this, and if the conditions change, you can alter your course, basically, is what I'm trying to say. So you're not locked into this plan if you do decide to do something like this. All right, so here's his 5-month review. So he's been doing this for 5 months. He's still going at it. He's very happy with it so far. He expects his phase 1 to take 42 months. Now, I think I had him hitting it earlier, but something I didn't account for was the margin interest being paid. So that could change the numbers pretty drastically, actually. So I think that's probably on par with what I would have had if I did take that into account. He's ahead 148 shares than had he not done it. That doesn't seem like that much to me, given the fact that he's using 100% of his buying power. Like, I would just feel so much better if he was doing this in, like, interactive brokers where his buying power could be 4-to-1, and he was just doing the 2-to-1 area because you have room for expansion and stuff. But and this guy makes some pretty clear posts. You can see what's going on. He basically says that this year he added 556 shares. He says that would take him 17 months, but instead he's done that in 5. So you see how this can really accelerate your position if you're going to do it. And it's just going to be a post or a series of posts that I'm going to like follow along just to see what happens. This isn't the first time that I've heard someone discuss this QYLD plan. In our Discord, a couple people were talking about using it. It's like the margin to retire plan is what we were calling it. It's when you buy QYLD, buy enough QYLD to be times 2 your cash, and because Interactive Brokers has 4-to-1 buying power, you have a lot of room for like a 50% drop. Still wouldn't put you at a margin call, or I guess 50% would, but just barely. Yeah, so that's what this plan is. Let me know what you guys think of it. Like, I find it very intriguing. I'm not doing it myself, but let me know.